They say love conquers all. But what happens when love exists in the space between heartbeats? Between the living and the undead? Between the warmth of sunlight and the comfort of eternal darkness? This is the story of Richter Jones and Ada Taylor, a couple trying to build a life together in the small town of Millbrook Falls. A couple with one impossible secret. One of them is a vampire. Richter Jones moved to Millbrook Falls on a Tuesday in October. The kind of October day where the leaves crunch underfoot and the air smells like wood smoke and promises. He arrived with a single suitcase, a worn leather jacket, and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of stories. The moving truck pulled up to 47 Maple Drive just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Richter watched it with an expression that neighbors would later describe as both longing and relief. Mrs. Henderson from next door brought over a casserole, still warm from her oven, and knocked on the door with the enthusiasm of someone who lived for neighborhood gossip. "Welcome to Maple Drive," she chirped when Richter answered. She was a woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Dorothy Henderson. I live right next door with my husband Frank. We've been here 30 years. Richter Jones," he said, taking the casserole with a polite smile. "Thank you for this. That's very kind." Dorothy's eyes scanned him from head to toe, cataloging every detail. "Pale skin," she noted. "Very pale. Unusual for someone who supposedly just moved from California. And those eyes, such an unusual shade of amber, almost golden in the porch light. You'll have to come to church this Sunday," Dorothy continued. "Reverend Matthews gives wonderful sermons. Everyone who's anyone in Millbrook Falls attends First Baptist." "I appreciate the invitation," Richter said, his smile never wavering. "I work nights, though. Makes Sunday mornings difficult." "Work nights? Doing what?" "Security consulting. Remote work, mostly. I keep unusual hours." Dorothy filed this information away, already mentally composing the conversation she'd have with her book club tomorrow. Before she could probe further, another car pulled into Richter's driveway. A beat-up Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. The woman who emerged from the driver's seat took Dorothy's breath away. Not because she was conventionally beautiful, though she was striking in her own right with wild auburn curls and sharp green eyes. No, what struck Dorothy was the way Richter's entire demeanor changed when he saw her. The carefully maintained politeness melted away, replaced by something raw and real. "Ada," he breathed, and the name sounded like a prayer. Ada Taylor bounded up the porch steps with the energy of someone who'd never learned to walk when she could run. She threw her arms around Richter, and Dorothy noticed how he seemed to melt into the embrace, how his face buried itself in her hair as though he were coming home after a war. "I'm sorry I'm late," Ada said, pulling back to look at him. "The interview ran long, but I got the job. I'm officially the new English teacher at Millbrook High." "That's wonderful," Richter said, and there was such genuine warmth in his voice that Dorothy found herself smiling despite her confusion. Ada finally noticed they had an audience. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there." "Dorothy Henderson," the older woman said, her tone considerably cooler now. "From next door. I was just welcoming Mr. Jones to the neighborhood." "That's so sweet of you," Ada said, taking the casserole from Richter's hands to examine it. "Is this tuna noodle? It smells amazing. I'm Ada Taylor, Richter's girlfriend." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Dorothy's smile tightened imperceptibly. "How lovely," she said. "And where are you from, dear?" "Boston originally," Ada replied. "But I've been bouncing around for the last few years. Teaching positions, you know. Hard to find permanent work these days." "And you're moving in here? With Mr. Jones?" The judgment in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Ada's smile didn't waver. "That's the plan," she said cheerfully. "We've been together for 3 years now. Figured it was time to put down roots somewhere quiet." Dorothy's eyes flicked between them, calculating. An unmarried couple living together openly in Millbrook Falls. This would not sit well with certain segments of the community. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I'm sure you'll find Millbrook Falls very welcoming. We're a close-knit community. Very close-knit. We all look out for each other. That sounds wonderful, Ada said, either missing or ignoring the warning in Dorothy's words. We're looking forward to being part of it. After Dorothy left, Ada turned to Richter with a grin. She hates us already. She's suspicious, Richter corrected, his voice low. We need to be careful, Ada. I'm always careful, she said, rising on her toes to kiss him. Besides, what's she going to suspect? That you're a centuries-old vampire trying to live a normal suburban life? That's ridiculous. But Richter didn't laugh. He pulled her close, his unnaturally cool skin against her warmth. I'm serious, he murmured. Small towns are different. Everyone watches everyone. One slip, one mistake, and everything we've built could crumble. Ada softened, wrapping her arms around his waist. Then we won't slip. We won't make mistakes. We've been careful for 3 years, Richter. We can do this. He wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to believe her. The first few weeks passed in a blur of unpacking boxes, setting up their home, and trying to blend into the fabric of Millbrook Falls. Ada started her position at Millbrook High, teaching English to students who ranged from genuinely enthusiastic to deeply resistant. She was good at her job, creative and engaging, and within 2 weeks she'd already become popular with most of her classes. Richter, meanwhile, kept to his nocturnal schedule. He worked from his home office, consulting for security firms across the country, analyzing vulnerabilities in digital systems. It was work that suited his nature, required his particular kind of patience and perception. And it kept him indoors during the day. Because Richter Jones was not human, and daylight was not his friend. He'd been turned in 1847, in a London alley that no longer existed in a city that had transformed beyond recognition. 178 years of walking the earth, of watching the world change, of losing everyone he'd ever cared about to time and mortality. Until Ada. He'd met her 3 years ago in a 24-hour diner in Portland. She'd been sitting alone at 2 in the morning, grading papers and drinking terrible coffee. He'd been drawn to her immediately, though he'd tried to resist. Getting involved with humans was complicated. Getting involved with humans was dangerous. But Ada Taylor had a way of bulldozing through his carefully constructed walls. She'd struck up a conversation about the book he was reading, an obscure 19th-century novel that most people had never heard of. Turned out she was an English teacher with a passion for forgotten literature. They'd talked until dawn, until Richter had to excuse himself before the sun rose. She'd given him her number. In case you want to discuss more forgotten books sometime. He'd called her the next night. It had taken him 6 months to tell her what he was. He'd tried to end things a dozen times before then, tried to protect her from the complications of his existence. But Ada was persistent. And when he finally confessed, expecting horror or disbelief, she'd simply said, "That explains a lot, actually. Can I ask questions?" They'd spent the entire night talking. She'd asked about his history, his turning, what it was like to live so long. He'd answered honestly, expecting her to run at any moment. She never did. "I love you," she'd said as the sun began to rise. "I don't care what you are. I love who you are." It was the first time anyone had said those words to him in over a century. Now, in Millbrook Falls, they were trying to build something neither of them had ever had before. A home. A normal life, or as normal as their circumstances allowed. But normal was proving elusive. The invitation arrived in their mailbox on a Saturday morning. Ada found it when she went out to get the mail, a cream-colored envelope with elegant script. You are cordially invited to worship with us at First Baptist Church of Millbrook Falls. Service begins at 10 a.m. All are welcome. Ada brought it inside where Richter was just waking up. He'd been asleep for a few hours, having worked until dawn. He emerged from the bedroom in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his dark hair disheveled, looking more human than he had any right to. "We got invited to church," Ada said, waving the invitation. Richter took it, reading it with a frown. "Dorothy Henderson's doing, I'd guess." "Probably. What do you want to do?" "You should go. Richter said immediately. Without you, Ada, I can't go to a church. Even if I could handle being awake during the day, churches and vampires don't exactly mix well. This wasn't entirely true. Richter had learned over the years that many of the old myths about vampires were exaggerated or false. Crosses didn't burn him. Holy water was just water. But churches were uncomfortable, the weight of faith and sanctity pressing against his undead nature like atmospheric pressure. Then I'm not going either, Ada said. You have to, Richter insisted. You're a teacher in this town. You need to be part of the community. And if you don't go, people will talk. They'll ask questions. Let them ask questions. Ada, please. He took her hands, his cool fingers wrapping around her warm ones. This is what we agreed. You live your normal life. You go to work, make friends, be part of the town. I stay in the background. That's how this works. That's how we stay safe. Ada hated it, but she knew he was right. Part of making this work meant her maintaining a normal public presence while Richter remained more mysterious, more removed. Fine, she said. But I'm going to be very clear that you work nights and that's why you can't attend. That's perfect, Richter said, kissing her forehead. That's all you need to say. So on Sunday morning, Ada found herself sitting in a pew at First Baptist Church of Millbrook Falls, surrounded by what seemed like half the town. The church was one of those classic white buildings with a steeple, the kind that appeared on postcards about small-town America. Inside, it smelled like old wood, furniture polish, and the perfume of 100 congregants. Dorothy Henderson had saved her a seat near the front. So glad you could make it, dear, she said, patting Ada's hand. Where's Mr. Jones? Working, Ada said pleasantly. He keeps night hours. Security consulting doesn't really follow a 9-to-5 schedule. What a shame, Dorothy said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. Perhaps he could adjust his schedule occasionally? Surely his soul is worth more than his work. Ada felt her jaw tighten but kept her smile in place. I'll mention it to him. The service itself was standard fare for a Baptist church in a small town. Reverend Matthews was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a booming voice. He preached about community, about looking out for one's neighbors, about the importance of living righteously. But Ada couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Multiple times throughout the service, she caught people staring at her. Some looked away when she met their eyes. Others held her gaze with open curiosity or suspicion. After the service, she was immediately surrounded. People introduced themselves, asked questions, probed gently about her background, her relationship with Richter, their plans in Millbrook Falls. It's so unusual for an unmarried couple to live together openly, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice sugary sweet. Are you planning to get married? Eventually, Ada said, keeping her tone light. We're in no rush. Well, you know what the Bible says about living in sin, Mrs. Patterson continued. Actually, the Bible has quite a lot to say on many topics, Ada replied, her English teacher instincts kicking in. Interpretation varies widely among different denominations and scholars. Mrs. Patterson's smile froze. Reverend Matthews rescued her, appearing at Ada's elbow with a warm smile. Miss Taylor, welcome. I hope you found the service meaningful. I did, thank you, Ada said, grateful for the intervention. I understand you're teaching at the high school. English. That's right. Wonderful. We need good teachers in this community. He paused, then added, Dorothy mentioned that your partner couldn't join us today. Richter works nights, Ada explained for what felt like the 100th time. Security consulting. It makes Sunday mornings difficult. Of course, the Reverend said. But perhaps he might join us for an evening service? We have Wednesday night Bible study at 7. Much more casual than Sunday morning. I'll mention it to him, Ada said, knowing Richter wouldn't go. As she drove home, Ada felt the weight of the morning settling on her shoulders. The constant questions, the barely veiled judgment, the sense of being evaluated and found wanting. Was this what their life in Millbrook Falls would be? Constant scrutiny and suspicion? She found Richter awake when she got home, working in his office. He looked up when she entered, reading her expression immediately. "That bad?" he asked. "They really don't like the fact that we're living together without being married," Ada said, collapsing onto the couch. "Apparently it's living in sin." Richter crossed the room and sat beside her, pulling her close. "We could get married." Ada looked up at him, surprised. "Are you proposing?" "I'm saying I would marry you tomorrow if that's what you wanted. If it would make things easier." "I don't want to get married because the neighbors are judging us," Ada said. "When we get married, if we get married, I want it to be for us, not for them." "Then we won't," Richter said simply. "Let them judge." But as the days passed, the judgment only intensified. It started small. Little things that could almost be written off as coincidence or paranoia. The morning Ada found their trash cans knocked over, garbage strewn across the lawn. "Probably raccoons," Richter said, helping her clean up. The flyer that appeared in their mailbox, advertising a couple's Bible study group at the church. Building strong Christian marriages in a godly community. The fact that their other neighbors, the Harrisons on the left side, had stopped waving when Ada saw them outside. Then it escalated. Ada came home from school one afternoon to find Dorothy Henderson standing on their porch, peering through the front window with her hands cupped around her face. "Can I help you?" Ada asked, her voice sharp. Dorothy jumped, spinning around with her hand on her chest. "Oh, Ada. You startled me." "I live here," Ada said. "What are you doing?" "I thought I heard something," Dorothy said, flustered. "Like someone might be in trouble. I was just checking to make sure everything was all right." "Everything is fine," Ada said coldly. "And in the future, if you're concerned, you can knock on the door like a normal person instead of peering through our windows." Dorothy's face flushed red. "Well, I was just trying to be a good neighbor." "Please don't," Ada said, unlocking her door and stepping inside, leaving Dorothy on the porch. She found Richter in the basement, where they'd set up a light-proof room for him to sleep during the day. He was just waking up, groggy and disoriented in the way he always was immediately after sleep. "We have a problem," Ada said. "Dorothy Henderson was looking through our windows." Richter was immediately alert. "What did she see?" "Nothing, I hope." "But Richter, this is getting out of hand. They're watching us constantly. Judging us. I feel like we're living in a fishbowl." "I warned you small towns would be like this," Richter said quietly. "I know. I just thought." Ada trailed off. "I thought we could make it work." "We can," Richter said, taking her hands. "We just need to be more careful." "I need to be more careful." But being careful wasn't enough. 2 weeks later, Frank Henderson knocked on their door at 3 in the afternoon. Richter answered, looking tired and annoyed at being woken up. "Sorry to bother you," Frank said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. "But we've been having some concerns about you folks." "Concerns?" Richter asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Well, you keep such odd hours. We never see you during the day. You don't attend church. And there's been some talk in town about your relationship with Miss Taylor." "Our relationship is none of anyone's business," Richter said. "In Millbrook Falls, everything is everyone's business," Frank replied. "That's how community works. We look out for each other. And when someone new moves in and keeps to themselves, acts suspicious, well, people notice." "Suspicious," Richter repeated flatly. "I work from home. I keep night hours because of my job. Ada works at the high school and attends your church. What exactly is suspicious about that?" "You tell me," Frank said, his eyes hard. "What kind of man sleeps all day and only comes out at night? What kind of man doesn't attend church even once? What kind of man moves to a small town and immediately starts living in sin with a young woman?" Richter felt his temper rising, felt the vampire nature he usually kept carefully leashed starting to strain against his control. His eyes must have shown something because Frank took a step back. "I think you should leave," Richter said, his voice low and cold. I'm just trying to look out for this community, Frank said. For the decent people who live here. Leave. Now. Frank left, but the damage was done. Sheriff Tom Bradley had been the law in Millbrook Falls for 20 years. He was a fair man, generally speaking. Not quick to judge, not prone to jumping to conclusions. But when Dorothy Henderson came to his office for the third time in 2 weeks with concerns about the new couple on Maple Drive, he knew he had to at least look into it. It's not natural, Tom, Dorothy insisted, sitting across from his desk. He never comes out during the day. Never. And Ada, sweet girl that she seems, she's clearly under some kind of influence. Living with a man she's not married to, defending his bizarre behavior. Dorothy, keeping unusual hours isn't a crime, Tom said patiently. But what if it's more than that? What if he's dangerous? What if Ada is in danger? Has she given any indication that she's in danger? Any signs of abuse or coercion? Well, no, but has Richter Jones broken any laws? Caused any problems? Not exactly, but then what exactly do you want me to do? Dorothy leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I want you to investigate him. Find out who he really is. There's something wrong with that man, Tom. I can feel it. Tom sighed. Dorothy Henderson was persistent, if nothing else. And while he didn't put much stock in her concerns, he also knew that sometimes looking into things was the only way to put rumors to rest. I'll run a background check, he said finally. But Dorothy, if it comes back clean, you need to leave these people alone. Understood. Of course, Dorothy said, though they both knew she was lying. The background check on Richter Jones came back clean. Too clean, actually. It showed a man born in California 32 years ago, educated at various universities, working in security consulting. Employment records, tax returns, everything perfectly in order. But Tom had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize when a background was too perfect. Too clean. Like someone had carefully constructed an identity rather than lived a life. He started digging deeper. He called the number listed for Richter's previous employer in California. It went to a voicemail that never got returned. He tried to verify his university degrees. The schools confirmed the degrees existed, but had no records of Richter attending classes. The more Tom dug, the more questions he had. Richter Jones existed on paper, but the paper trail was thin, almost artificial. He decided to talk to Ada. He found her in her classroom after school, grading papers. She looked up when he knocked on the doorframe, surprised to see him in uniform. Sheriff Bradley, she said. Is everything okay? I hope so, Miss Taylor. Can I ask you a few questions? Of course. Ada set down her pen, giving him her full attention. How long have you known Richter Jones? 3 years. We met in Portland. And you moved here together? Yes. I got the job at the high school, and Richter can work remotely, so it made sense. What exactly does Mr. Jones do? Security consulting. He analyzes digital systems, finds vulnerabilities, helps companies protect themselves from cyber attacks. And he works exclusively at night? Ada's expression cooled slightly. His clients are all over the world. Different time zones. And some of the work he does is easier to do when network traffic is lower, which is typically at night. I see. Miss Taylor, has Mr. Jones ever done or said anything that concerned you? Anything that made you feel unsafe? No, Ada said firmly. Never. Sheriff, what is this about? Tom hesitated. There have been some concerns raised about Mr. Jones. About his unusual schedule, his reclusive nature. I'm just following up. Concerns from Dorothy Henderson, Ada said flatly. Among others. Richter is a private person, Sheriff. He keeps unusual hours because of his work. He doesn't attend church because he works Sunday mornings. He stays out of the public eye because he's an introvert who works from home. None of that is illegal or even unusual. No, it's not, Tom agreed. But Miss Taylor, I've done some background checking, and Mr. Jones's history is thin. Very thin. Thin how? His credentials check out on paper, but when I try to verify them, I hit walls. It's like his past was constructed rather than lived. Ada's heart was racing, but she kept her expression neutral. Maybe you're just not looking in the right places. Maybe, Tom said, watching her carefully. Or maybe there's something about Richter Jones that you're not telling me. Sheriff, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing sinister going on. Richter is exactly who he says he is. Now, if you don't mind, I have papers to grade. It was a dismissal. Tom recognized it and stood. Miss Taylor, if you're ever in trouble, if you ever need help, my door is always open. I'll keep that in mind, Ada said. After he left, Ada sat in her empty classroom, her hands shaking. They'd been so careful. Richter's identity had been crafted by professionals, vampires who'd been creating false documents for centuries. It shouldn't have raised any red flags. But they'd underestimated small-town scrutiny. She texted Richter, *, we need to talk. Sheriff came by with questions. *. His response was immediate. On my way. They sat at their kitchen table, the lights dim because Richter's eyes were sensitive after being woken early. Ada had filled him in on the sheriff's visit, on the questions about his background. We should leave, Richter said. Pack up tonight and be gone by morning. No, Ada said firmly. I'm not running. I have a job I love, students who are counting on me. We've only been here 2 months, Richter. We can't just flee every time someone asks questions. Ada, if they keep digging, then we deal with it. But I'm not spending my life running from town to town, never putting down roots, never having a real home. You don't understand what's at stake, Richter said, his voice rising. If they figure out what I am. They won't. Because there's no such thing as vampires, remember? We're just a weird couple who keeps odd hours. That's all they'll ever find. You're being naive. And you're being paranoid. They stared at each other across the table, the first real fight of their relationship crackling in the air between them. I've survived for over a century by being paranoid, Richter said quietly. By being careful. By knowing when to disappear. But that's not living, Ada said. That's just existing. Surviving. I don't want to just survive, Richter. I want to live. I want a home, a community, a life. I want us to have that. At what cost? I don't know, Ada admitted. But I know I'm not ready to give up yet. Richter stood, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. You don't know what they'll do if they find out. What people are capable of when they're afraid. So we make sure they don't find out. How? By being perfect all the time. By never making a mistake? Ada, that's impossible. Then we be as close to perfect as we can be. But perfection was proving elusive. The following Sunday, Ada returned to church. This time, Reverend Matthews made a point of approaching her before the service. Miss Taylor, I was wondering if I might speak with you privately for a moment. Ada followed him to his office, a small room lined with books and religious texts. He gestured for her to sit. I've been hearing concerns from members of the congregation, he began, about you and Mr. Jones. I'm aware, Ada said. Mrs. Henderson has been quite vocal. It's not just Dorothy, Reverend Matthews said gently. Many people in this community are troubled by your living situation. An unmarried couple living together openly, it goes against the values we hold dear. With all due respect, Reverend, my living situation is between me, Richter, and God. I understand that perspective, he said. But you're also a public figure now. A teacher in our schools. You have a responsibility to set a good example for our young people. Ada felt her temper flaring. I am setting a good example. I'm showing them that women can have careers, can be independent, can make their own choices about their lives. But at what moral cost? There is no moral cost, Ada said. Richter and I love each other. We're committed to each other. We're not hurting anyone. Except yourselves, Reverend Matthews said. And the fabric of this community. Miss Taylor, I'm not saying this to judge you. I'm saying this because I care. About you, about your soul, about the influence you have on our children. If people are so concerned about my influence on their children, they're welcome to request a different teacher, Ada said, standing. Excuse me, Reverend. I think I'll skip the service today. She walked out of the church and sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying not to cry from frustration and anger. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Asterisk, you don't belong here. Leave while you still can. Asterisk. Ada stared at the message, her hands shaking. This was crossing a line from judgment into something darker. She started the car and drove home. Things came to a head on a Wednesday night in November. Ada was hosting a study session at their house for some of her students who were struggling with an upcoming exam on Shakespeare. She'd invited 5 students, all of whom had permission from their parents to attend. The session was going well. The kids were engaged, asking good questions, starting to understand the complexities of Macbeth in ways they hadn't before. Richter stayed in his office, out of sight but aware of the activity in his home. Then Dorothy Henderson showed up. Ada answered the door to find the older woman on her porch, accompanied by 2 other women Ada recognized from church. "Can I help you?" Ada asked. "We need to speak with you," Dorothy said, "about these students in your home." "I'm in the middle of a study session." "We know. That's why we're here." The 3 women pushed their way inside before Ada could stop them. The students looked up from the dining room table, startled and confused. "Mrs. Henderson?" One of the girls, Sarah, said. "What are you doing here?" "We're here to collect you children," Dorothy announced. "It's not appropriate for you to be here." "My mom said I could come," Sarah protested. "Your parents don't understand the full situation," one of the other women said. She was Mrs. Patterson, the woman who'd confronted Ada about living in sin. "They don't know what kind of household this is." "What kind of household?" Ada asked, her voice dangerous. "An immoral one," Dorothy said. "Run by an unmarried couple. With a man who refuses to show his face during daylight hours. Who never attends church. Who could be anyone or anything." "Get out of my house," Ada said. "We're taking these children with us," Dorothy insisted. "No, you're not. They're here with their parents' permission. If their parents want them to leave, they can call me and ask me to send them home. But you have no authority here. We have a moral obligation." "You have nothing," Ada interrupted, "except a lot of judgment and prejudice. Now get out before I call the police." "Call them," Mrs. Patterson said. "Maybe they'll finally investigate your boyfriend properly." That's when Richter appeared. He'd been listening from his office, and he'd heard enough. He emerged into the living room, and something about his presence made the 3 women take an involuntary step back. "You need to leave," he said quietly. "Now." There was something in his voice, something old and dangerous, that made the demand impossible to ignore. Dorothy, for all her bluster, felt genuine fear for the first time. "This isn't over," she said, backing toward the door. "Yes," Richter said. "It is. You will not harass Ada again. You will not come to this house uninvited again. You will not spread lies about us in this community. Am I clear? You can't threaten me." Richter took a step forward. Just one step, but the 3 women practically fled. After they left, Ada turned to her students, who were staring at Richter with wide eyes. "I'm so sorry about that," she said. "That was completely inappropriate." "Mr. Jones," Sarah said hesitantly. "You're really pale. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Richter said. "I have a condition that makes me sensitive to sunlight. It's why I work nights." "Like that disease," another student, Mark, said. "What's it called?" "Where people can't go in the sun." Xeroderma pigmentosum, Richter supplied. Similar, yes. It was a lie, but a convenient one, and one the students seemed to accept. The study session continued, though the energy was different now. When the students left, Ada collapsed onto the couch. That was bad, she said. It's going to get worse, Richter replied. Ada, please. Let's leave. Tonight. We can be gone before anyone realizes. I can't just abandon my students mid-semester. You might not have a choice. But Ada was stubborn. She refused to run. The next day at school, she was called into the principal's office. Principal Morris was a severe woman in her 50s who ran Millbrook High with an iron fist. She gestured for Ada to sit, her expression grim. I've received several complaints from parents, she began. About your conduct. Regarding what? Your living situation. The study session at your home last night. The general concern that you're not setting an appropriate example for our students. Ada felt something cold settle in her stomach. I see. Miss Taylor, you're an excellent teacher. Your students love you. But this is a small, conservative community. The school board is very concerned about maintaining certain standards. Are you firing me? No, Principal Morris said. But I am strongly encouraging you to reconsider your living arrangements. Or at minimum, to stop hosting students at your home. We need to maintain appropriate boundaries. Appropriate boundaries, Ada repeated. You mean boundaries that conform to the community's moral standards? Frankly, yes. Ada stood. I'll think about it. But she already knew what her decision would be. Ada came home to find Richter packing. What are you doing? She asked, though she knew. What I should have done weeks ago, he said, not looking at her. I'm leaving. Just you. Ada's voice was barely a whisper. Richter finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was almost unbearable. I'm not going to let them destroy your life, Ada. You have a career here, a future. Students who need you. I need you, Ada said, crossing the room to grab his hands. Richter, please don't do this. They're going to keep pushing until they find out what I am. And when they do, it won't just destroy me. It'll destroy you too. Your career, your reputation, everything. I don't care about my reputation. But I do. Richter's voice broke. I care about you. About your happiness, your safety, your future. I've lived a long time, Ada. I've seen what happens when communities turn against someone. I've seen the torches and pitchforks, literally. I've seen people I cared about burned alive because they associated with me. This isn't the 19th century. Human nature doesn't change, Richter said. Fear doesn't change. Hatred doesn't change. They'll find a way to hurt you, Ada. And I can't watch that happen. Ada felt tears streaming down her face. So what, you're just going to leave? Disappear? Let them win. I'm going to protect you the only way I know how. By breaking my heart? Richter pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I love you. More than I've loved anyone in 178 years. More than I thought I was capable of loving. That's why I have to go. No, Ada said, pulling back to look at him. If you love me, you stay. You fight for us. You don't just give up. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing your well-being over my own happiness. That's not your choice to make. They stood there, inches apart, both of them crying. Outside, night was falling. Inside, their world was crumbling. Come with me, Richter said suddenly. What? Come with me. Leave Millbrook Falls. We'll go somewhere else, somewhere bigger, somewhere we can disappear into the crowd. I have a job. You can get another job. Somewhere that won't judge us. Somewhere we can actually be happy. Ada wanted to say yes. Every fiber of her being wanted to throw her arms around him and agree to leave this judgmental, small-minded town behind. But something stopped her. If we run now, she said slowly, we'll always be running. Every time things get hard, every time people ask questions, we'll pack up and flee. Is that really how you want to spend eternity? Always hiding, always afraid. It's how I've survived for almost 2 centuries. But is it living? The question hung between them, unanswerable. Before either of them could speak again, there was a knock at the door. A hard, authoritative knock. Richter and Ada exchanged glances. He moved to the window and looked out. "It's the sheriff," he said, "with 2 deputies. "Don't answer it," Ada said. "If we don't answer, they'll come back with a warrant." Another knock, louder this time. "Mr. Jones. Miss Taylor. This is Sheriff Bradley. I need to speak with you." Richter took a deep breath and opened the door. Sheriff Tom Bradley stood on the porch, his expression grim. Behind him were 2 younger deputies, both with their hands resting on their service weapons. "Sheriff," Richter said calmly, "what can I do for you?" "I need you to come down to the station with me, Mr. Jones." "On what charge?" "No charge yet. Just some questions that need answering." "Then I'm sure we can answer them here." "I'd prefer to do this at the station," Tom said, his voice hardening. "You can come voluntarily, or I can arrest you for obstruction." "Obstruction of what?" Ada demanded, appearing behind Richter. "He hasn't done anything wrong." "Miss Taylor, I'd recommend you stay out of this." "He's my partner. I'm not staying out of anything." Tom sighed. "Fine. You can both come to the station. But Mr. Jones is coming one way or another." Richter looked at Ada, 1,000 silent conversations passing between them in a glance. Then he nodded. "I'll come voluntarily." The interrogation room at the Millbrook Falls police station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, a metal table, uncomfortable chairs, and a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Sheriff Bradley sat across from Richter, a file folder in front of him. Ada had been told to wait outside, despite her protests. "Mr. Jones," Tom began, "I'm going to be straight with you. Your background doesn't check out." "In what way?" "In every way. Your employment history is fabricated. Your educational credentials can't be verified. Your social security number is legitimate, but the person it was issued to died 3 years ago in a car accident." Richter said nothing. "You're using a dead man's identity," Tom continued. "That's identity theft. That's a federal crime." "I haven't stolen anyone's identity," Richter said calmly. "Then explain to me how you have a social security number belonging to a deceased person." "Administrative error, perhaps." "Don't insult my intelligence," Tom said, his voice sharp. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know when someone is hiding something. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me who you really are, why you're hiding, and what you want in Millbrook Falls. Or I'm going to charge you with identity theft and whatever else I can make stick." "I want to live a quiet life," Richter said. "That's all I've ever wanted." "Under a false identity?" "Is that really the question you want answered, Sheriff? Or do you want to know why I never come out during the day? Why I don't attend church? Why the good people of Millbrook Falls find me so unsettling?" Tom leaned back in his chair, studying Richter. There was something about the man's eyes, something ancient and knowing that made Tom deeply uncomfortable. "What are you?" he asked quietly. "Excuse me." "You heard me. What are you?" "Because you're not normal, that much is clear." Richter smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'm a man trying to live his life in peace, Sheriff. That's all you need to know." "That's not good enough." "It will have to be." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Tom opened his file folder and pulled out a photograph. He slid it across the table. Richter looked at it and felt his undead heart skip a beat. It was a photograph from 1952. A newspaper clipping about a murder in Chicago. And there, in the background of a crowd scene, was a face that looked exactly like Richter Jones. "This photo is 73 years old," Tom said. And that man looks exactly like you. Not similar. Exactly like you. Many people have doppelgangers. I have 3 more photos, Tom interrupted. One from 1931. One from 1978. One from 1995. Different cities, different decades. Same face. Your face. Richter closed his eyes. They'd been so careful. So incredibly careful. But you couldn't erase a century and a half of existence completely. There were always traces, always photographs, always evidence for someone determined enough to find it. I want my lawyer, Richter said. You're not under arrest. Yet. Then I'm free to go. Mr. Jones. Sheriff, either charge me with a crime or let me leave. Those are your options. Tom stared at him for a long moment. Then he stood. You're free to go. For now. But Mr. Jones? I'm going to figure out what you are. And when I do, I'm going to make sure you never hurt anyone in this town. I've never hurt anyone in this town, Richter said quietly. And I never would. Especially not Ada. Then why are you lying to her? I'm not lying. She knows exactly who and what I am. Tom's eyes widened. And she still loves me? Yes. Because unlike everyone else in this town, she doesn't judge people based on what they are. She judges them based on who they are. Richter stood and walked to the door. Tom didn't stop him. In the waiting area, Ada jumped up the moment she saw him. Are you okay? What did they ask you? Are they charging you with anything? Not yet, Richter said. Let's go home. They drove in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. When they pulled into their driveway, they saw something that made Ada gasp. Someone had spray-painted their house. In large red letters across the white siding, Monster. And on their front door, Get out. Ada felt rage surge through her, hot and cleansing. She jumped out of the car and marched toward the house, ready to call the police, ready to file a report, ready to fight. But Richter just stood by the car, staring at the words, his expression unreadable. This is it, he said softly. This is the beginning of the end. Word spread quickly about the vandalism. But instead of sympathy, Ada found herself facing even more judgment at school the next day. Maybe someone's trying to send you a message, Mrs. Patterson said in the teacher's lounge, her voice dripping with false concern. Maybe it's time to listen. Someone vandalized my home, Ada said, her voice shaking with anger. That's a crime, not a message. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways, Mrs. Patterson replied. Ada walked out before she said something she'd regret. That evening, there was an emergency town meeting at the church. Ada wasn't invited, but she went anyway. Richter tried to convince her to stay home, but she refused. The church was packed. Every pew filled with concerned citizens, all talking in hushed, urgent voices. When Ada walked in, the room fell silent. She took a seat in the back, her chin held high, refusing to be intimidated. Reverend Matthews stood at the pulpit, his expression grave. Friends, neighbors, we're here tonight to discuss a matter of great concern to our community. The presence of Richter Jones and his influence on one of our own, Ada Taylor. This is ridiculous, Ada called out, standing. You're having a town meeting about my boyfriend? Please sit down, Miss Taylor, Reverend Matthews said. No. If you're going to talk about Richter, I have a right to defend him. Defend him from what? Dorothy Henderson stood, her voice ringing through the church. From the truth? From the fact that he's hiding something? From the evidence that he's not human? The crowd murmured, the word not human rippling through the pews like poison. That's insane, Ada said. He's a man with a medical condition that makes him sensitive to sunlight. That's all. Then why are there photographs of him spanning 70 years? Sheriff Bradley stood, holding up the photos. Why does a man who claims to be 32 years old appear in newspaper photographs from 1952, 1931, 1978, and 1995, looking exactly the same age? The crowd erupted. People were standing now, shouting, demanding answers. "He's a vampire," someone yelled. "He's dangerous. He's corrupting our children." "Enough." Ada's voice cut through the chaos. "Listen to yourselves. Vampires aren't real. You sound like a medieval mob ready to burn someone at the stake because you don't understand them." "Then explain the photographs," Tom said quietly. Ada's mind raced. She couldn't. Not without revealing the truth. "Those could be anyone," she said weakly. "Family members who look similar. Identical." Tom held up the photos. "Across multiple decades? Miss Taylor, I know you care about this man. But you need to consider the possibility that he's been lying to you. That he's dangerous." "He's not dangerous," Ada said, her voice breaking. "He's the kindest, gentlest person I've ever known. He's never hurt anyone." "How do you know?" Dorothy demanded. "How do you know what he does while you're asleep? While the rest of us are living our normal daytime lives? What is he doing in the dark, Ada?" "He's working. He's living his life. He's doing nothing wrong." "Then bring him here," Reverend Matthews said. "Let him face us. Let him answer our questions. If he has nothing to hide, let him prove it." Ada looked around the church at all the faces staring at her with suspicion, fear, and judgment. These people had already made up their minds. Nothing Richter could say would change that. "No," she said quietly. "I won't subject him to this witch hunt." "Then you're protecting him," Dorothy said. "Which means you know we're right. You know he's a monster." "The only monsters I see are in this room," Ada said. "People who would rather believe in fairy tales than accept that someone is different from them. People who would vandalize someone's home, threaten them, try to drive them out of town because they don't conform to your narrow definition of normal." She turned and walked out of the church, the weight of their judgment following her like a physical force. Ada found Richter sitting in their darkened living room, staring at nothing. "They know," she said. "Or at least, they suspect." "I heard," Richter said. "Vampire hearing. I could hear everything from here." Ada sat beside him, taking his cold hand in her warm one. "We have to leave," she said. "Tonight. Before this gets worse. I thought you didn't want to run." "I don't. But I also don't want to watch them hurt you. And they will, Richter. You heard them. They're scared and angry and looking for someone to blame for everything wrong in their small, narrow lives." Richter pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I should never have come here," he said. "Never have put you in this position. Don't say that. The past 3 years have been the happiest of my life. Even now. Even now." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Richter spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "There's another option." "What?" "I could turn you." Ada pulled back to look at him, shocked. "What?" "Make you like me. A vampire. Then we'd have forever together. You wouldn't have to worry about aging, about dying, about being separated from me. Richter. We could leave Millbrook Falls and never worry about hiding again. We could be ourselves, completely, for eternity." Ada stared at him, her mind reeling. It wasn't the first time the idea had crossed her mind, but Richter had always refused to discuss it. He'd always said the vampire life was a curse, not a gift. "You've always said you wouldn't turn me," she said carefully. "That you wouldn't condemn me to this existence." "I was wrong," Richter said. "I was selfish. I wanted to protect you from the darkness of my world, but in doing so, I didn't give you the choice. It should be your decision, Ada. Not mine." "And you'd really do it? Turn me? If you wanted it. If you truly wanted it." "Yes." Ada thought about it. About never seeing another sunrise. About watching everyone she knew and loved age and die while she stayed forever young. About feeding on blood to survive. About becoming something that most of the world believed was a monster. But she also thought about forever with Richter. about never having to hide, about having the power to protect herself, to stand up to people like Dorothy Henderson and Sheriff Bradley without fear. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course," Richter said. "It's not a decision to make lightly." Before they could discuss it further, there was a crash from upstairs. The sound of breaking glass. Richter was on his feet instantly, moving with inhuman speed toward the stairs. Ada followed, her heart pounding. Someone had thrown a rock through their bedroom window. Attached to it was a note written in the same red paint that marked their house. Asterisk last warning. Leave or die. Asterisk. "That's it," Richter said, his voice cold and hard in a way Ada had never heard before. "We're leaving. Tonight. Pack only what you need. We're gone in an hour. Richter." "No arguments, Ada. They've crossed a line. They're threatening violence. I won't risk your life to make a point about belonging." Ada wanted to argue, wanted to insist they stay and fight. But looking at the broken glass, the threatening note, she realized Richter was right. This had gone beyond judgment and prejudice. This was dangerous. "Okay," she said. "We'll leave. But Richter, I want you to turn me." He stared at her. "What?" "I've made my decision. I want to be like you. I want forever with you. I don't want to keep hiding, keep running, keep pretending to be something I'm not. If we're going to leave, if we're going to start over, I want to do it as equals. As partners. As two vampires facing the world together." "Ada, you don't have to do this." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Richter, I love you. And I want every day that eternity can give us." Richter pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It will hurt. The transformation. And there's no going back. I know. And you'll have to feed. On blood. On humans, at least at first. I know. Ada." "Richter, stop trying to talk me out of it. Just say yes." He pulled back to look at her, his golden eyes searching her face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. He found none. "Yes," he said finally. "If this is truly what you want, then yes. I'll turn you." "How does it work?" "I drain most of your blood. Then you drink mine. The transformation takes 3 days. It's painful. Excruciating, actually. But I'll be with you the entire time." "When?" "After we leave here. Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one will hear you scream." The bluntness of his words sent a chill through Ada, but she didn't waver. "Then let's pack." They were loading the last of their bags into Ada's car when the headlights appeared. Not one car. Not two. At least a dozen vehicles pulling onto Maple Drive, surrounding their house. Richter cursed, immediately pushing Ada back toward the house. Inside. Now. But it was too late. Doors were opening. People were getting out. Richter recognized most of them. Dorothy Henderson and her husband Frank. Mrs. Patterson. Several men from the church. Sheriff Bradley and his deputies. And they were armed. Not with guns, oddly enough. But with wooden stakes. Crosses. Bottles that Richter assumed held holy water. They'd come prepared for a vampire hunt. "Mr. Jones," Sheriff Bradley called out. "Miss Taylor. We need you to come with us." "We're leaving," Richter called back. "You're getting what you want. We're leaving Millbrook Falls tonight." "It's too late for that," Dorothy Henderson said, stepping forward. She was holding a large wooden cross in front of her like a shield. "We know what you are, demon. And we're not going to let you leave here to terrorize some other town." "I haven't terrorized anyone," Richter said, his voice deadly calm. "I've lived quietly. Harmed no one. All I wanted was peace." "Monsters don't get peace," Frank Henderson spat. "They get judgment." "You don't know what you're dealing with," Richter said, and for the first time, There was a thread of something dangerous in his voice. "I've been controlling myself, being civil, because of Ada. Because I wanted to build a life here. But if you threaten her, if you try to hurt her, I will show you what a real monster looks like." "Richter, don't," Ada whispered, grabbing his arm. "They're threatening to kill us, Ada." "We're threatening to kill you," Dorothy corrected. "Ada is human. Ada is a victim of your corruption. Once you're dead, she'll be free." "I'm not a victim," Ada shouted. "And Richter isn't a monster. He's more human than any of you." "He drinks blood," Mrs. Patterson said. "He's a creature of Satan." "How do you even know that?" Ada demanded. "Have any of you actually seen him drink blood? Or are you just believing fairy tales?" "We have evidence," Sheriff Bradley said, stepping forward. He was holding a folder. "We searched your trash, Miss Taylor. Found blood bags. Medical blood bags. Dozens of them." Ada's heart sank. They'd been so careful about disposing of the blood bags Richter used for feeding, but apparently not careful enough. "That's an illegal search," she said. "Actually, once trash is on the curb, it's public property," Tom replied. "Everything in there was legal to examine. And what we found was very interesting. Blood bags. All drained. All from different blood types. All with teeth marks in them." The crowd murmured, their fear and anger growing. "So here's how this is going to work," Tom continued. "Mr. Jones is going to come with us. We're going to take him somewhere he can't hurt anyone. And we're going to wait for sunrise." "You're going to kill him," Ada said, horror dawning on her face. "We're going to expose him to daylight," Tom said. "If he's human, like he claims, the sunlight won't hurt him. But if he's what we think he is—" "You're insane," Ada said. "All of you. You're talking about murdering someone because you found blood bags in his trash." "We're protecting this community," Reverend Matthews said, stepping forward from the crowd. He looked genuinely sad, which somehow made it worse. "Miss Taylor, I know you care for this man. But he's not a man. He's an abomination. And God's word is clear about how to deal with such things." "God's word says, 'Thou shalt not kill,'" Ada shot back. "It also says, 'Suffer not a witch to live,'" Dorothy countered. "He's not a witch, he's a vampire. And even if he were, that passage is mistranslated. The original Hebrew says, 'poisoner,' not 'witch.' You're using bad theology to justify murder." "Enough talking," Frank Henderson said. "Are you coming peacefully, Jones, or do we have to take you by force?" Richter looked at the crowd. At least 20 people, all armed with vampire hunting implements that might or might not actually work. He could fight them. Probably even win. But not without killing some of them. Not without proving everything they believed about monsters to be true. And not without putting Ada in danger. "If I come with you," he said slowly, "what happens to Ada?" "She's free to go," Tom said. "Or stay. Whatever she wants. She's not the one we're after." "Richter, no." Ada grabbed his arm. "Don't do this." "I don't have a choice," he said softly, looking at her. "If I fight them, people will die. And you might be one of them. I don't care. I do." He cupped her face in his hands, his golden eyes boring into hers. "I love you, Ada Taylor. Remember that. No matter what happens next, remember that every moment with you was worth it." "Richter, please." He kissed her. Long and deep and desperate. When he pulled away, there were tears on both their faces. Then he turned to the mob. "I'll come with you," he said. "But I want your word, Sheriff, that Ada will not be harmed. That she'll be allowed to leave Millbrook Falls safely." "You have my word," Tom said. Richter nodded. He started walking toward the crowd, his hands raised in surrender. That's when Ada made her decision. "Wait," she called out. Everyone turned to look at her. "If you're going to kill him," she said, her voice strong despite her fear, "you'll have to kill me too." "Miss Taylor." "No. Listen to me. All of you. Richter is a vampire. You're right about that. But do you know how I know? Because I've known for 3 years. 3 years of being with him, living with him, loving him. And in all that time, he has never once hurt me. Never once threatened me. Never once done anything except protect me and care for me. He's corrupted you. He hasn't corrupted anyone. Ada's voice rose. He doesn't kill to feed. He orders blood bags from medical suppliers. He doesn't attack people. He doesn't spread evil. He's just a man trying to live his life in peace. He's not a man, Dorothy insisted. Then what am I? Ada pulled down the collar of her shirt, revealing 2 small scars on her neck. Because he's been feeding for me for 2 years now. And I'm still here. Still human. Still alive. Still myself. The crowd gasped. Richter closed his eyes, knowing what she was doing. She was making herself a target, drawing their attention away from him and onto herself. If Richter is the monster you think he is, Ada continued, why am I not dead? Why am I not a vampire myself? Why am I standing here, completely human, completely unharmed, telling you that you're wrong about him? Because you're under his spell, Mrs. Patterson said. There's no spell. Ada was shouting now. There's just love. Love between 2 people who are different but who found each other anyway. And if you can't understand that, if you can't see past your prejudice and fear to recognize that difference doesn't equal evil, then you're the monsters. Not him. Silence fell over the crowd. Some people looked uncertain. Others looked angry. Sheriff Bradley looked conflicted. Then Reverend Matthews spoke. The devil's greatest trick, he said quietly, is convincing people that he doesn't exist. Miss Taylor, I believe you believe what you're saying. But that doesn't make it true. Love can blind us to evil. It can make us defend the indefensible. Then you're all beyond reason, Ada said. And if you're going to take Richter, you'll have to go through me first. She stepped in front of Richter, her arms spread wide, her body shielding his. Ada, don't, Richter whispered. I meant what I said. If you die, I die. That's how this works. For a long moment, nobody moved. The standoff held, tension crackling in the night air. Then Sheriff Bradley sighed and lowered his weapon. This is wrong, he said. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? Dorothy demanded. This is wrong, Tom repeated. We're standing here with weapons, threatening to kill someone who, as far as I can tell, has committed no actual crime. Yes, he's a vampire. Yes, that's terrifying and beyond my understanding. But Miss Taylor is right. If he was the monster we think he is, she'd be dead. Hell, half this town would be dead. Instead, he's been living quietly, harming no one, just trying to exist. He drinks blood, Frank shouted. From medical suppliers, Tom countered. Not from people. There hasn't been a single suspicious death or disappearance in Millbrook Falls since he arrived. Not one missing person report. Not one unexplained injury. If he's a monster, he's the most harmless monster I've ever seen. So what are you saying? Dorothy's voice was shrill with disbelief. We just let him stay? I'm saying we let them leave, Tom said. Which is what they were trying to do when we surrounded their house with weapons. Let them pack their car and go. Let them be someone else's problem. They'll just terrorize another town. Or, Tom interrupted, they'll continue living quietly and harming no one, like they've been doing here. And honestly, that's not our business. Our business is protecting Millbrook Falls. And the only threat to Millbrook Falls right now is us. We're the ones acting like a mob. He turned to Richter and Ada. Pack your car, he said. You have 1 hour to be gone. And I'd recommend you never come back. Tom, you can't, Dorothy started. I can and I am, Tom said firmly. I'm the sheriff. This is my call. And I'm making it. Everyone, back to your cars. This is over. For a moment, It looked like the crowd might rebel. Then, slowly, reluctantly, people began moving back to their vehicles. Not everyone was happy about it. Dorothy Henderson looked like she wanted to spit nails. But they went. Tom waited until everyone had driven away before turning back to Richter and Ada. 1 hour, he said. And then I don't ever want to see either of you again. Understand? Understood, Richter said. And Sheriff? Thank you. Don't thank me, Tom said. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I signed up to uphold the law, not to be part of a lynch mob. Now go. He walked to his car and drove away, leaving Richter and Ada alone on their lawn. They stood there for a moment, not quite believing they were still alive. Then Ada started laughing. Hysterical, relieved laughter that quickly turned to sobs. Richter pulled her close, holding her as she shook. "We're okay," he murmured. "We're okay." "That was insane," Ada said. "That was absolutely insane." "I know. They were going to kill you." "I know. We can't stay here." "No," Richter agreed. "We can't." They went inside and finished packing in record time. Within 45 minutes, everything they cared about was loaded into Ada's car. As they drove away from 47 Maple Drive for the last time, Ada looked back at the house that was supposed to have been their home. "I'm sorry," Richter said quietly. "For what?" "For not being able to give you the normal life you wanted." Ada reached over and took his hand. "I don't want normal," she said. "I want you." And maybe that was always going to mean a life on the run, changing towns every few years, always watching over our shoulders. But you know what? I can live with that. As long as I'm living it with you. Are you sure? About you? Always. They drove through the night, Millbrook Falls disappearing in the rear-view mirror. As they crossed the town line, Ada felt something like relief wash over her. "So," she said, "about that offer. To turn me. Is it still on the table?" Richter glanced at her, surprised. "After everything that just happened, you still want it?" "Especially after everything that just happened. Richter, I don't want to spend my life being the weak human you have to protect. I want to be your equal. Your partner. And besides," she smiled, "if we're going to be fugitives, I'd rather be a fugitive with supernatural powers." Richter smiled despite everything. "You're incredible, you know that?" "I know. So is that a yes?" "That's a yes. Once we find somewhere safe. Somewhere no one will hear the transformation. Then I'll turn you. Promise." "I promise." Ada settled back in her seat, a strange sense of peace settling over her. "So where are we going?" "I know a place," Richter said. "A city big enough to disappear in. Where vampires have lived for decades without anyone noticing." "Sounds perfect." "There's a community there. Other vampires. They'll help us. Teach you. Make sure the transformation goes smoothly." "Other vampires?" Ada perked up. "Like a vampire community?" "Something like that." "Do they have vampire parties? Vampire book clubs?" "Please tell me there are vampire book clubs." Richter laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "There might be." "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go meet your people." They drove for 6 hours, finally arriving in Seattle just as dawn was breaking. Richter directed Ada to a neighborhood called Capitol Hill, full of old Victorian houses and tree-lined streets. "This is it," he said, pointing to a 3-story house painted deep purple with black trim. "This is where we'll stay while you transform." "It looks like a haunted house," Ada observed. "That's the point. Keeps people away." A woman answered the door before they could knock. She was tall and elegant, with long black hair and skin the color of mahogany. Her eyes were the same golden amber as Richter's. "Richter Jones," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "It's been, 40 years?" 43, Richter said, embracing her. "Celeste, this is Ada. My partner." Celeste's eyes studied Ada with interest. The human you've been protecting all these years. I've heard stories. All true, probably, Ada said, shaking her hand. Celeste's grip was cool and strong. Come in, both of you. You look exhausted. The house was beautiful inside, furnished with antiques and artwork that spanned centuries. Other vampires emerged from various rooms as word spread of Richter's arrival. By the time they reached the living room, at least 8 vampires had gathered to greet them. Everyone, Richter said. This is Ada Taylor, and she's asked me to turn her. The room erupted in conversation. Some vampires looked excited, others concerned, a few skeptical. Are you certain? Asked an older vampire named Marcus, who Richter introduced as one of the community elders. The transformation is irreversible. Eternal. You'd be giving up your humanity forever. I understand, Ada said. And I've never been more certain of anything. She survived a mob tonight, Richter added. Stood between me and a crowd of humans armed with stakes and crosses. She's proven herself. Celeste nodded approvingly. Then we'll help with the transformation. It's better done with support. The screaming can last for days. Screaming? Ada asked weakly. Did Richter not explain? Celeste looked at him accusingly. The vampire venom rewrites your entire biology at the cellular level. Every nerve ending fires at once. It's been described as feeling like you're being burned alive from the inside. You made it sound painful, Ada said to Richter. You didn't mention torture. I was trying not to scare you. Too late for that. But I'm still doing it. Marcus studied her for a long moment. You love him that much? I love him enough to face down a mob, Ada said. I love him enough to give up sunlight, normal food, my teaching career, and apparently 3 days of excruciating pain. So yes, I love him that much. Marcus smiled. Then you'll make a fine vampire. When do you want to begin? Now, Ada said. Before I lose my nerve. Ada, you don't have to, Richter started. I know I don't have to. But I want to. And I want to do it now, while I'm still brave. Celeste led them to a room in the basement that had been converted into what she called a transformation chamber. The walls were padded with soundproofing, and there was a bed in the center with leather restraints. The restraints are for your protection, Celeste explained at Ada's alarmed expression. The pain will be so intense you might hurt yourself thrashing. We'll keep you restrained until the transformation is complete. Ada nodded, her mouth dry with fear. Richter took her hand. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. Kiss me, Ada said. One last time as a human. He did. It was gentle and sweet and full of love and promise. When they pulled apart, Ada lay down on the bed and held out her arm. I'm ready. The first bite wasn't so bad. Richter's fangs pierced the soft skin of her wrist, and Ada felt a sharp sting followed by a strange pulling sensation as he began to drink. She'd let him feed from her before, but never like this. Never draining her to the edge of death. After a minute, she started feeling light-headed. After 2 minutes, the room began to spin. After 3 minutes, she could barely keep her eyes open. Richter, she whispered, her voice weak. He pulled away, his lips stained with her blood. His eyes were darker now, more predatory. It reminded Ada that despite everything, despite his gentleness and love, he was still a vampire. Still a predator. Now you drink from me, he said, biting into his own wrist until blood welled up. He pressed the bleeding wound to Ada's lips. Drink. The blood tasted coppery and wrong, and she almost gagged. But she forced herself to swallow. Then swallow again. And again. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a minute, Richter pulled his wrist away. That's enough, he said. For a moment, nothing happened. Ada just lay there, feeling weak and dizzy and wondering if it had worked. Then the pain started. It began in her chest, a burning sensation like someone had poured acid into her heart. Then it spread outward, following her veins, her arteries, every blood vessel in her body suddenly on fire. Ada tried to scream but couldn't get enough air. Her back arched off the bed, every muscle in her body seizing at once. "Hold her," Celeste commanded. Multiple sets of hands held Ada down as she thrashed. Dimly, through the haze of agony, she felt the restraints being fastened around her wrists and ankles. Then the pain intensified. If the first wave had been acid, this was molten lava. Every cell in her body was being rewritten, destroyed, and rebuilt simultaneously. Her bones felt like they were breaking and reforming. Her organs felt like they were being dissolved and reconstructed. And she screamed. Oh God, how she screamed. Richter never left her side. He sat beside the bed, holding her restrained hand, whispering words of comfort that Ada couldn't hear over her own screaming. The other vampires took turns checking on them, bringing Richter blood bags to keep his strength up, offering encouragement. "The first day is always the worst," Marcus told him. "The body fighting the change. By tomorrow, the screaming will lessen." But it didn't feel like it would ever lessen. Ada's throat was raw from screaming, but she couldn't stop. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined. Beyond anything she thought a human body could endure. Several times, she lost consciousness, only to wake up screaming again as another wave of transformation hit. Richter wept. Watching the woman he loved suffer because of his venom, because of a choice he'd agreed to, was torture of a different kind. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, over and over. "I'm so sorry, my love. Just hold on. Just survive this." The screaming had subsided to whimpers and moans. Ada's voice was completely gone, destroyed by nearly 24 hours of continuous screaming. But the pain was still there. Still burning through her, reshaping her into something new. Something other than human. She could feel the changes now. Her senses were sharpening. Through her closed eyelids, she could see the faint light coming from under the door. She could hear conversations happening 3 floors up. She could smell blood, fresh and tantalizing, coming from somewhere in the house. And she was so thirsty. God, she was so thirsty. "Almost there," Richter said, stroking her hair. "Just one more day. You're doing so well." Ada tried to respond, but only managed to croak. Her throat was too damaged for words. But she squeezed his hand, letting him know she heard him, that she was still fighting. The pain began to recede. Not all at once, but gradually, like a tide going out. Ada could feel her body settling into its new form, accepting what it had become. She opened her eyes. Everything was different. The room was dark, lit only by a small lamp in the corner, but Ada could see every detail with perfect clarity. The texture of the soundproofing on the walls. The individual fibers in the carpet. Dust motes floating through the air. And she could hear everything. Water running through pipes in the walls. Someone's heartbeat on the floor above. The sound of wind against the windows. "Ada." Richter's voice, filled with hope and fear. "Can you hear me?" She tried to speak, but her throat was still too damaged. Instead, she nodded. "The transformation is complete," Celeste announced, appearing in the doorway. "Welcome to immortality, Ada Taylor." They removed the restraints carefully. Ada sat up slowly, testing her new body. Everything felt different. Stronger. Sharper. More. She looked at Richter and saw him with new eyes. She could see the vampire nature in him now, the predator lurking beneath the gentle exterior. But she could also see the love, shining bright and true. "How do you feel?" he asked. Ada tried to speak again, managed a rasping whisper. "Thirsty." Celeste handed her a blood bag. "Drink slowly at first. Your body is still adjusting." Ada tore into the bag with newly sharp fangs she hadn't known she had. The blood tasted different now. Not coppery and wrong, but sweet and necessary and perfect. She drained the entire bag in seconds. "More," she whispered. "Easy," Richter said. "Too much too fast will make you sick." But Ada wasn't listening. She could smell blood everywhere. In the house, in the neighborhood, warm and alive and calling to her. She stood, swaying slightly as she adjusted to her new strength and balance. "Ada, wait." But she was already moving, faster than she'd ever moved in her life, up the stairs, following the scent of blood. She burst out of the house into the night. It was raining, but Ada barely noticed. She was focused on the heartbeat she could hear 3 houses down. Human. Alive. Full of blood. Ada, stop. Richter caught her from behind, wrapping his arms around her and holding her back with all his strength. You can't. Not yet. Not when you're this new. I need it, Ada growled, her voice inhuman. I need blood. I know. But not from humans. Not like this. You'll hate yourself after. Ada struggled against him, but Richter was older, stronger. He held her until the bloodlust began to fade, until reason started returning to her eyes. When she finally stopped fighting, he gently turned her around to face him. I know it's hard, he said softly. The thirst is overwhelming at first. But you can control it. I'll teach you. We all will. You don't have to be a killer, Ada. Ada looked down at her hands, at the inhuman strength in them, at the pale skin that would never see sunlight again. What have I become? She whispered. Something beautiful, Richter said. Something eternal. Something that gets to spend forever with me. Ada looked up at him, at the man who had turned her, who had given her this dark gift, who loved her enough to share his immortality. Forever, she repeated. Forever, Richter confirmed. And despite the thirst, despite the strangeness of her new existence, Ada smiled. Ada had adapted to vampire life better than anyone expected. Under the guidance of Richter and the Seattle vampire community, she'd learned to control her bloodlust, to navigate immortality, to embrace what she'd become. They'd stayed in Seattle, finding their place among the hidden vampire society that existed beneath the city's surface. Ada had even found a way to continue teaching, running night classes for adult learners who never questioned why their teacher only worked after sunset. She and Richter had married in a small ceremony attended by their vampire friends. No church, no reverend, no judgment. Just 2 people who loved each other making promises for eternity. They'd created the life they'd always wanted. Not the normal suburban existence they tried to build in Millbrook Falls, but something better. Something real. Something theirs. Sometimes late at night, Ada thought about that small town. About Dorothy Henderson and Sheriff Bradley and Reverend Matthews. She wondered if they ever thought about the couple they'd driven away. If they regretted their fear and prejudice. Probably not. People like that rarely did. But it didn't matter anymore. Ada had found where she belonged. Not in a small town that demanded conformity, but in a hidden world of shadows and secrets, where difference was celebrated rather than feared. She stood on the balcony of their apartment, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Richter came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How much I hated Millbrook Falls, Ada said. And how grateful I am that they drove us away. If they hadn't, I might never have had the courage to become this. Any regrets? About becoming a vampire? Not one. About never seeing another sunrise? Sometimes. But not enough to change my choice. I love you, Richter said, kissing her neck. I love you too. Forever and always. They stood there together, 2 vampires watching the night, 2 people who had found their happy ending in the most unlikely way. Behind them, the apartment was warm with the presence of their chosen family. Celeste was cooking something that smelled amazing despite neither Richter nor Ada being able to eat it anymore. Marcus was arguing about philosophy with another vampire. Laughter and conversation filled the air. This was home. Not a house on Maple Drive in a judgmental small town, but here, among people who understood them. Among people who accepted them. And it was perfect.